To our next panel, we're delaying the movie because since we're an international sports film festival, we actually do have people who are bound by the restrictions brought about by COVID-19. This includes curfew, and so we must stick to the timetable. So our next panel is Commercialization of Sports as a Business. And we have with us from the government of the Republic of Kenya's Ministry of Trade, Industrialization, and Enterprise Development, a gentleman by the name of Mr. KIMANI KIIRU, and he is the Senior Deputy Assistant Secretary of Trade. He will be joined by Mr. Gary RATHBONE from South Africa, and Gary is the current head of sport at South African National Broadcaster, SABC, founder of Sports News Africa, and former head of Africa for Supersport. An African football journalist and a TV producer who has written, produced, and directed African sports shows like the African Soccer Show and Football Africa for Supersport. He will be joined by Mr. Olivier Dodd from France. He's a sports industry professional, currently living in France and working for La Liga. He has also worked for the league in East Africa, where his primary focus was on football development. And all this is going to be moderated by Madam Florence NDUTA, who is the Events and Marketing Director for the Kenya International Sports Film Festival since inception, 2018, 2019, and now 2020. And she has over 25 years experience in various industries, including finance and the creative economy. Welcome. Thank you, and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. That was an amazing introduction to my team, locally and internationally. Today we'll be talking about the commercialization of sports as a business. Gentlemen, Jambo, it's so good to see you. I see Olivier, I see Monsieur Kibani. Karibu sana. So we'll get straight into it because Olivier, I understand you have a curfew. So we'll make sure that you don't get caught up in that. So I'll come straight to you, sir. The mandate of the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development is to promote trade in Kenya. Mr. Kimani, how does the State Department for Trade ensure that sport is promoted as a commodity?
Thank you for having me on the panel. The Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development is mandated to promote export. The sports and the film industry are major sectors which have remained hugely unexploited. The realization of this potential has necessitated the ministry to finalize what we are calling an integrated national export development and promotion strategy, which was done 2 years ago, and which has recognized sport and film industry as one of Kenya's export drivers. Under this strategy, the State Department is currently involved in the development of a national export policy for recreational, cultural, and sports services. The aim of the policy is to create a conducive environment for the development of recreational, cultural, and sports. The department is also actively engaged in the conclusion of bilateral trade agreements with target countries geared toward providing a framework for Kenya sports and film services to enable providers export services to this country.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Gary, I can see you've joined us. Jambo from Nairobi, Kenya. Good to see you finally. I'll throw this one at you. Is sports a business? What is the sports industry comprised of? Who are the players?
I'm always astounded that people are still asking that question when one considers the billions and billions of dollars that get spent on sports rights, on sports teams, on sports players, and things like that, on events, the marketing, the billions that get spent on advertising and sponsorship deals that goes with sports. that for anybody to think that sport is not a business, it astounds me that people, after all these, all these years, people still ask that as a question. Of course, it's a business. It's a massive business. It's one of the biggest businesses in the world in terms of what it contributes to a country's GDP, what it contributes to, what it enables on a number of levels. And I do think that it is a problem. Many countries still. I still get a bit offended in a way, and it's actually happened here in South Africa even, where sport doesn't actually have its own ministry, and it's tacked into sort of recreation and culture, basically, as though that these things are all on the same kind of level, and they're clearly not. I mean, sport should actually be at a government level, should be more, it sort of either have its own ministry, and it should be working more closely with industries rather than just recreation and culture, because it's a very, very different thing completely.
Absolutely, that's very, very interesting. And coming to business, Olivier, La Liga has a business school. Why the investment in a business school? What was the vision and the impact of making this into the industry?
So yes, as you clearly mentioned, La Liga has a business school, and the objective is to train and educate the future leaders of the business industry, because we realized that there's a lack of know-how, not only in Spain, but across the world. Mm-hmm. So the objective of La Liga Business School is to open up our doors to teach the younger generations what the sports industry is about, more particularly the football industry, and hope for a better management of teams and professional clubs in the future.
Thank you very much for that. Tell me, let's all talk about COVID. How has COVID affected the business of sports? What solutions are in place? What's the way forward? Right now we can see that Europe is threatened with another lockdown, just as we were starting to take off. So Olivier, please give us an insight on what's happening on the ground.
Yes, so I'm based in France, as you know, and we're under lockdown actually since today. So we'll be under lockdown for at least a month. Talking about football competitions across Europe, the difference between the first lockdown and this lockdown is that professional sports will continue to run. So even if countries have imposed curfews or lockdowns, leagues will still be able to run because we realized that for the first time round, the lockdown greatly impacted the industry, and yes, so we had to find solutions to address the problems we had, and thankfully, those are all in place to guarantee, a good quality product, not only for TV spectators, but for fans around the world.
Okay. Gary, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm talking about now the other sports disciplines. How do you think this is going to affect the industry?
Well, I'm talking mainly from a broadcasting point of view, because that's my kind of main area from the media proposition. And I think that in many ways it's been quite a challenge at the beginning, because obviously when sport was switched off, it affected people. It had a very negative impact from the broadcaster side, as well as on sports rights as a whole. But two things I think have come out of that is quite positive. Firstly, it's shown the hunger that people actually have for sport as a media property, as that more than anything else, the coming sport, when it came back, the impact was huge. The audiences, the people that came to television and to watch it, basically, were even stronger than before. So I do think that it's shown the value of sport, and as Olivier is saying, is that they've realized that having a lockdown is one thing, but to actually stop sport is something else completely, and that it's such a part of the fabric of everyday life that It's it's part of what people live and breathe. I do think there's the other point as well, which I think is really valuable, has been that we are now seeing the opportunity that digital and OTT broadcasting is playing, and that more and more people are now becoming much familiar and much more engaged with actually accessing content via streaming services. And I think that's going to point the way forward to the way how sport, I've always said that this is the way sport is going, and it's going to happen in the next few years, that everybody will be accessing all their sports content through streaming platforms directly from the sports owners, not through pay TVs and the like. And I think that what COVID has shown is that this process is going to happen not in maybe 2 years, 3 years time, but probably in the next year or so, because I think it's made everything happen a lot quicker.
Great. I'm going to throw this at both of you. Let's talk about the golden triangle, so to say, which is the relationship between sports, the media, the sponsorship. Basically, where is the money making? Where does it happen? How does this all work, this triangle? Gary or Olivia can pick on this.
Sorry, I've actually had a thing about that golden triangle sort of approach, and I used to use it in presentations, but I developed it not as a triangle, but I used to talk about it as a spiral, because what it does is that all three elements feed off each other. So what it was always is when you've got a sports property, and I used to speak about this a lot when I was at Supersport in Kenya, and we were building the Kenyan Premier League, and we're saying that there's a whole, that each factor depends on the other, but it needs to start. And once that spiral starts, once the first element starts kicking in, then the spiral happens, because they lift each other up. So say you've got a league and you've got the organization, then you get sponsorship that comes in, or you get media coverage. Because you get coverage and the money that comes with it, you get sponsorship now, because you can organize a better league. Because you've got a better league, you now suddenly start getting a greater audience. Because you're getting a greater audience, suddenly you get more sponsorship. So that goes up. And because you're getting more sponsorship, other media players want to come in and they start bidding for those rights. So suddenly you're making more from media sponsorship. And then you're making more from media sponsorship. More people are coming means more money comes in from sponsors and advertisers, and so on and so forth. And that's how it spirals upwards, basically. So you need at one point for it to start, and then once that can start, and the people organizing, and this is always where it fails, is because the organizers, the federation heads and the like, basically they lack the vision for the long-term process, and they kind of cash in on the first swing around, and then everything collapses. But if you focused and you keep on looking ahead and building upwards, the spiral works, and you find yourself over a 10-year period with a very, very valuable sports property on your hands.
Olivier, what do you think of that? What are your comments?
I agree with Gary. It's all about creating a valuable product that you're able to sell in the right way, because, if you have a strong league or competition, then, there'll be high demand, from spectators to watch that football competition or, sports we're talking about. So then, money comes in from TV broadcasting, and that allows, sports competitions to really have great visibility. And it's with those numbers that they go and sell, sponsorship. You go see a company and you say, listen, okay, we have this amount of TV viewership, we have a huge presence on social media. You can benefit from this visibility that we're getting, because a lot of companies, big companies, they want to associate themselves to the emotions that sports generate. If your team, for example, scores, you get very excited, and if you get a brand that gets associated to that emotion, then it's a win-win situation for everyone.
Win-win for everyone, and I'm going to feed on that, because I want to just think, isn't there a pressure on the player, on the athlete, with all this pressure, with all this? It's more of, I need to make sure that I succeed in what I'm supposed to do. You lose more or less what we call the spirit of sports. Do you think that the pressure is there? Just to keep the commercial spots, up? Olivia.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
What I'm saying is the pressure right now, I'm talking about the pressure on the player, or killing what we call the spirit of sports because of this commercialization. When we talk about the sponsorship goes up, means like these players who we have been able to pick and pay high amount of money from specific clubs, is there pressure for them to more or less, they have to hit their targets or enjoy the game? This has come from a question from outside.
I mean, so it's, of course, yes, you have your objectives on the field, and you also think, and as an athlete, and you think of your image outside the field. I mean, both are related, but of course, now big players such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Messi have a huge, they're brand ambassadors and have signed big money deals with some, companies around the world. So, they're juggling those two aspects of being a professional athlete. And I think, of course, what should be of most importance is their performance on the field, because I guess that's, it helps them gain visibility across the world. It's true that, sports has changed, and, we have to treat now these athletes as celebrities, because some of them, have, we look at, for example, celebrities on Instagram. The most followed celebrities are football players. So I think we can put them in the same category. At the end of the day, we're talking about the entertainment industry, and we often say this at La Liga, our competitors are not only the Premier League, the Champions League, but also products such as Netflix or Amazon Prime, because, if you're, I'm going on to, this is not exactly the same topic, but I'm saying, yes, you're competing, with other products of the entertainment industry, and, you need to try to convince people to watch your product in their free time.
True. Okay, thank you for that. I'll come back to you, Mr. Kimani.
I could add.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Gary.
Add there, basically, is that the thing, that greatness thrives on pressure, and the same applies to football players, or in that respect, as to any business, in any business environment. So whether you're a politician or a businessman or an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. To be great, for the great ones of success will thrive on that pressure. And that's what it's about, basically. So to say that pressure ruins the game, I think it just makes it better.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Mr. Kimani, should sports and cultural products and services be treated differently from other goods and services?
Allow me to say no on the onset. Why? Because I don't think they should be treated differently from other goods and services. This is because, like other sectors, sports industry has a lot of business opportunities. It is portable, and these opportunities come in terms of fees for usage of facilities, equipment hire, coaching, and other services. So this income that you can get from sports allows clubs to attract coaches and improve sport facilities in general. And this also contributes to income. So it is just like any other business. Film industry, on the other hand, also has two components.
Okay.
The production side, which produces content for both film and television, and also the distribution side, which also comprises of businesses that sell and supply films that are produced to cinemas, television, broadcasters, or rentals, all other retail and online outlets. So,
excellent. Thank you, sir. Yes. I have another very interesting question. Does commercialization tend to support the popular sports, leaving the lesser sports to lose out? Gary, your thoughts?
Yes, look, I think they do. It does actually, because I mean that's the way things work. But again, and I think that the minister's actually his observations there were absolutely spot on, and I think he understands this very very well. And if you look at the film, it's the same as like looking at blockbuster movies and then the independent cinema and art house movies. They have different kinds of revenue things and different kinds of levels of success and different kinds of audience. And I do think that and a lot of the independent cinema things make great movies, but they don't have that kind of mass commercial appeal. And that's where governments and other and commercial bodies get behind to sponsor them, to allow them to help them find the funding so that they can exist. And that's the way it works should work in sport as well. Whereas the blockbusters, they make that huge commercial money, they fund themselves, and then they should really get less from government and less from commercial enterprises that support that. So that's, you know what I mean, within this kind of system, sport is no different to most other commercial entities in that regard.
Oh, great, thank you. What do you think about that, Olivier?
I mean, it's true. It's unfortunate that some of the lesser sports get less visibility than the most played sports, such as football. It's all about demand, right? So if you have X amount of people wanting to watch your games and a lesser amount wanting to watch games of another sport, then of course, you're going to be able to commercialize your discipline in a better way.
Yeah.
What we've done at La Liga, just to give you an example of how we try and tackle that, because we know that we're the most popular sport in Spain, although we don't want other disciplines to fall behind. So we've actually created an OTT platform where we broadcast a lot of content, and we've talked to most of the minor sports federations in Spain to tell them, listen, okay, your product is not being broadcasted on TV.
Wow.
We can produce those games or whatever the competitions you're organizing and broadcast them for free on our OTT platform, with the objective, of their disciplines getting more visibility, and hopefully in the long term being able to commercialize their competitions in a better way.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Kimani.
Yes.
What is the role of trade agreements regarding market access in the film and sports industry? I mean, why I'm asking this, because I did speak earlier to Olivier this week and told him that there is a platform, because I know he has worked in Kenya before. There is a platform that Kenya has for anybody from outside, for you to facilitate you for whatever you need to do in our country. So please, Bwana Kimani, if you can just tell them about that.
Yeah, the basic mandate of the government is to harness Kenya's international relations and promote and protect its interests abroad and contribute to the development goals of Kenya's Vision 2030, for example. Just like in any other sector of the economy, the sports and film industry in Kenya and around the world experience regulatory barriers that limit access to foreign sports and teams to the country's domestic market. The negotiations of agreements and the memorandum of understanding that make it possible to deal with such issues of market access barriers. The main purpose of agreements is to eliminate or reduce the barriers to market access for sports and film service providers, and also to harness them through international commitments, which are either bilateral, multilateral, or even regional. So there are measures on movements of capital and labor, for example. Foreign filmmakers need both the capital and labor for producing films in a host country. It is important to note that these measures are generally enforced in all sectors of the country. Reducing or eliminating them requires negotiations, agreements, such MOUs, covering the movement of production factors. Other issues within the sports and film industry that require negotiations or agreement with other countries include competition policies, intellectual property rights, rules of on cross-border water data laws, among others. So this reflects the general complexity of the area, of the regulatory framework. So we have negotiations of these agreements, which are aimed at eliminating or reducing these deeply entrenched economic distortions in the domestic market, which are harmful to national market. So therefore, trade agreements can contribute towards establishing a healthier environment for domestic sport and international.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Gentlemen, should sports be commercialized and why? Gary?
Well, it already is actually. So I don't think about a matter of should. I mean, we have it's highly commercialized. The question is that should it be commercialized more? Absolutely. I mean, this is the direction that it is moving in. It has been moving for many years now, and the amount of money that is generated is massive. I think that in many territories, people haven't done enough or fully understood the benefits of commercializing the sport properly. And I think particularly, on our own continent, we have an issue where people are still, and particularly on the major sports, more interested in trying to get money out of the likes of CAP and FIFA and the things and what they can make there, rather than trying to turn their own properties into very effective and very efficient commercial entities. And I think that's short-sighted, because there's a lot more money to be made for everybody when a sport can float its own boat, as it were, rather than having to sort of rely on handouts from national or international and federations and government and the like. So I think that maybe the question is that we need to work much more effectively with our approach to commercialization and sport, particularly here on our own continent.
And how does the media benefit from this, you who's been in media?
Well, the media benefits from it, because that means that the more that a property is commercialized and more professional it becomes, the more attractive it becomes as a property to put onto media. So as a broadcaster, it's great for me to get great content that's well made, that's well thought out, that's attractive to viewers. Because I know that I get advertisers coming to watch that property on my channel, on my platform. And that means that there's more revenue. That means that there's more revenue for me as a broadcaster. And if there's more revenue for me as a broadcaster, that means that the sport in question can then charge more for those rights for me to broadcast that. So there's a huge benefit for broadcasts, for the media, basically. And the more attractive it becomes, the more the press have got to talk about, the more general interest there is in a sport. And I think it's critically important for a more effective commercialization for the media.
Oliver, your comments?
I mean, it's very important, yes, for professional sport to be commercialized, because you realize, especially in European countries, that grassroots level sports depends on professional sports, because let's take the football league in France, for example. So they give a percentage of the TV money that they receive to the local federation that invest in grassroots football. So you have a whole structure in place that's not only benefiting the professional leagues but also the lower leagues, meaning that academies and other development structures have the funds to be able to develop our athletes of tomorrow. Because it's very important to think about the long term. It takes many years to develop top quality footballers, and it's not something that you do over the course of a couple of years. So in that sense, it's very important. And going back to Spain, it's when we look at some figures, like the sports industry represents 1.8% of the GDP of the country.
Wow.
And over 180,000 jobs. So we're talking about a huge industry, and it's very important for clubs and broadcasters and sponsors to capitalize on that.
So I'm talking about, I know your previous appointment was in Kenya, and you were heading the East African docket. Developing football in Kenya, that is part of, I think, the investment of La Liga. What is the plan moving forward, looking at Africa or any other areas in the world that's where you have been doing what you're doing? What is the plan forward?
So, yes, I mean, our first objective overseas is to get closer to our fans, understand how football is consumed in every country, see what we can do to give La Liga more visibility in each market. And our second objective, especially in certain markets such as, Kenya and other East African countries, was to help with the development of not only professional football, but also grassroots football. You mentioned the fact that, yes, we worked on a couple of grassroots football projects. And yes, we were working hand in hand with FKF, so the federation in Kenya, on very different projects with Safaricom in giving kids opportunities to demonstrate their talent and gain more visibility. And the overall objective is to see more of these kids playing in the top leagues in Africa, and why not one day in Spain?
Absolutely.
Or in Europe.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Gary, where do you think we're going with the commercialization and growth of sports as an industry and a business in Africa? What is your view on that?
Well, I'm hoping we're growing and we're going forward, basically, and trying to build a better proposition, a better commercial proposition, a more efficient organizational proposition, something that is attractive to viewers, something that is attractive to broadcasters, something that is attractive to sponsors. I think these are all the key things, the questions that we always need to be asking ourselves when we actually putting something together in terms of the market. Having been working in African football now for over 20 years, and what I've kind of experienced, and I think about the issues that we were trying to work on and solve, basically, between 2008 and 2012, when I was at Supersport and in Kenya, in Nigeria, and in Zambia, and a lot of countries where we were working on, we were running the leagues, and making a lot of good progress. And then to find, here we are now, sort of 8 years down the line, or nearly a decade since then, to find that very little progress has actually been made. In fact, a lot of the things have just been undone again. So I think that the key factor is that I think there are too many people that are very short-sighted in their approach. It's always about looking to see what they can do for themselves, rather than looking at the bigger picture and what they can do to build the proposition around them. And unfortunately, as long as those kinds of people are still getting in the way of the progress that's trying to be made, it's always going to set us back. But I do think that is the biggest challenge. We need to start saying, how do we make this bigger and better for everyone? For sports fans, for sports players, for advertisers, for broadcasters, for everyone.
So we could do better.
We could do a lot better, basically, because, as I said, here I am 10 years later, and it doesn't look like much has changed at all.
Because you kind of like read my mind, and I was trying to ask, where are we going wrong? Why aren't we getting it right? Where are we failing?
Yeah.
You kind of like jumped that, but would you kind of like go into that a little bit more? I mean, call it out.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think it's just too short-sighted, basically. It's everybody at the top trying to say, well, how do I make football work for me? And I think that's where it goes wrong, basically. You should be saying, how do I make football work for football fans, for advertisers, for football players? For, you know what I mean? And they're around. Everyone's out in there trying to get whatever they can for themselves. And until that mindset changes, everybody's going to be scrabbling over pennies instead of actually making the really big money that can be made from a properly run professional organization. And until we get that right, we're always going to be running backwards.
Olivier, you were here, you worked in Kenya, you worked in Africa. I'll give you the same question. Where do you think we are failing? Where do you think we're going wrong? Where can we improve?
I mean, first of all, there's a lack of investment at a grassroots level, in many different disciplines, which means that there's no talent coming through, and so the professional leagues are they're not at the level that we would like them to be, even compared to other African leagues. And let's take Kenya for example. The Premier League and other European leagues are so popular over there that people don't even watch the local league, which is a bit of a shame, because I believe that the local league should always be the most watched league in every country. So if you don't have that demand, then it's very difficult to get that investment. And of course, what Gary was saying, sometimes there's a lack of long-term plans. People think about the short term. How can I benefit from this situation, rather than thinking, about the sport in 20 or 30 years time? And yes, I think some organizations could be better run. So there are various different factors to come into account.
Okay, we have a question from the public. How does the commercialization of sports affect the autonomy of sport, gentlemen?
Olivia, do you want to take that one?
I mean, it's how I guess, the more a sports discipline is commercialized and generates money, the more importance it gets, and the more governments and public officials listen to the organizers of these competitions. Because at the end of the day, a lot of public officials are looking at how can we, if a certain discipline is generating a lot of tax income, then that discipline gains in importance. I mean, I guess that's what the question was trying to address, right?
Yes, I guess that's what she wanted to ask. Thank you very much for that. Okay, how has commercialization of sports affected the sport industry over the years, and how is it currently influencing the industry today?
Gentlemen.
Thanks, Oliver. Pass the ball back. Exactly. I mean, it is affecting it, because the more, as we were saying earlier on, the more commercial it becomes, then it becomes more efficient and more effective. Because you can't become commercial unless you become efficient and effective in that way. And just going further to that autonomy question as well, as that old saying about beggars can't be choosers. And until sports organizations can become more efficient and self-sufficient and run themselves, then they are too often playing in the roles of being beggars. And when you don't have any autonomy. So the more commercialization, the more efficient you become, the more autonomy that you have, and the more you're able to shape a sports, your federation, the sport itself, and the way that it engages in your country, in your region, in a way that works for you, rather than always having to kind of worrying about who's going to help you out this time.
Yeah, true. Olivier, what do you think, from where we've been, where we've come from, and where we're going?
So, I mean, of course, COVID has really affected the industry, and we're thinking about how can we move forward. And it's true that a lot more has we're focusing our attention on digital expansion, the development of OTT platforms, because of course football is, or just sports in general, is not consumed in the same way. So it's going to be interesting to see how all these new technologies affect football or sports consumption.
Okay, Mr. Kimani. I know we've been talking a lot of sports right now. So what is your view on how do you think that the ministry now can be able to step in to support the sports industry moving forward?
I think the ministry will try to support sportsmen and sportswomen in and by nurturing their talents. We have recently established talent academies. So we are trying to ensure that we tap the talent of young people so that they can grow and become professional in sports. So this way, we shall be able to develop more and encourage many youth as possible to join and take sports as a business like any other.
You said something very interesting to me the other day when we spoke. Please give us more insight to it and looking at what is trade. I'm now representing the layman. We talked about when somebody goes to the stadium and buys a ticket, that is trade. Could you just give us an insight for the layman, that conversation that we had?
Here in Kenya, not many people view sports as a business like any other. But when you consider that when you go to a stadium to view a game, you pay a fee. This fee is like buying any other commodity. When we also get advertisements for a certain game, for example, the advertisers are earning from that. So it becomes a tradable commodity because we have very many stakeholders involved, whether they are providing services to the sportsmen, either in uniform or refreshments. This now becomes a commodity like any other. So we should try to encourage people to view it as a commodity like any other. So if they see that angle, then they will understand that sports are no different from any other sellable commodity.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you so much for that insight. So, Olivier, I'm going to ask you give you a parting shot because I do understand you do have a curfew. So please.
It's not, as I was saying initially, no, we're now under lockdown, so there's no curfew. We can't even leave our homes.
Oh my God.
So I'm in no rush. Thanks a lot, Florence, for this discussion. It was very insightful to be able to discuss with yourself, with Mr. Kimani, and with Gary on this topic, which is of great interest, and which keeps changing, and we're learning, even if we're in the industry, it's changing, so we keep learning on new solutions to address the problem. So it's a very interesting topic, and if we have this conversation in 2 or 3 years' time,
yes,
I'm sure our answers will be completely different. So
absolutely.
That's the beauty of the industry, and I'm very glad that it's becoming more professional because 20 or 30 years down the line, bar the States and maybe the UK, the industry. So it's a true pleasure to be able to work in the sports industry, and I'm fascinated to see how things will change over the next couple of years and even the next decade.
Okay, Mr. Kimani, your parting shot?
Well, I think this kind of engagement is very good because we come to learn of what is happening in other parts of the world. But I would also want to say sometimes we get prejudices, like maybe Gary may comment. In the recently concluded Virgin Marathon, our athlete was not treated well because she was not handed over a flag at finishing line. And even today, if you go to Google, you will find that the second person, the second athlete, the athlete who finished second, was handed a flag, and the picture still stands there, but our athlete does not have a flag. So this kind of treatment is not good. I don't know whether Gary may have a comment on why the media doesn't portray uniformly what kind of
Gary, you can comment on that with your passing shot, the media.
Yeah. Well, yeah, media. I mean, it's you know, it's interesting is that the way that fairness is kind of it's a very difficult one to kind of fully kind of get my head around. But the thing is, I do want to say that for my parting shot is that I agree with Oliver as well that certainly the thing is, one thing for sure is that the sports media environment, well, the media environment as a whole, is in incredible flux at the moment. A lot of amazing changes that are happening across the board, and I think that it's going to change a lot of things. Things are not going to be the same as they were now in 5 years' time. When we meet to have this discussion in 5 years' time, we'll be talking about many different things. But I think that at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities that are going to come out of this, a lot of good opportunities. And I think in many ways, it's going to create a sense of equalization. And because I think technology will lift a lot of the things that have been on the margins and allow them an opportunity to get access to audiences. I mean, Oliver was talking about what they're doing with La Liga, with creating that streaming platform for all the niche and smaller sports and things like that. These digital platforms are going to offer more opportunity for sports, other sports like that. And I think that's going to be really exciting.
I am Florence NDUTA. I am the events director of Kenya International Sports Film Festival. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, guys.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.